Hello, everybody. My name is Guy Meyer, and this is my local Marin show, California Times. Today I'm here with Niz Brown. Niz is from the San Geronimo Valley and is really one of the leaders in the efforts of preserving the golf course. And most people in Marin County are aware of the controversy, the amazing, it seems like kind of a roller coaster ride in the last 2 years since the county announced plans to purchase the golf course and to basically have it shut down and sort of creating a nature preserve.
How did we get here?
How do we get here?
How did we get here? We have emails from Todd Steiner to his people. Todd Steiner is the president of Spawn, which is a subsidiary of the Turtle Island Restoration Network, that says we tried to acquire the golf course. We heard that it was on the market and we tried to acquire it. And we went to the county and talked to Rodoni and asked him to do it. We actually have emails that show that in March, on March 30th of 2017, that they were talking about acquiring it. That is Dennis Rodoni, our supervisor, and he was giving the information to the people at the county about the golf course, who owns it, and they, from the get-go, promulgated the information that it was a losing proposition, that they weren't making money, and that's why Mr. Lee needed to sell it. Mr. Lee just wanted out. He had actually told the golfers, one of my partners wants out, I need to sell it. I'll take $5 million for it if you guys can come up with somebody to buy it for $5 million. Lo and behold, Dennis Rodoni, our supervisor, goes to Max Corton, who's in charge of parks, Carl Summers, who's in charge of open space, and he actually went to Matt Heimel as well. And they decided to go to Mr. Lee, who owned the golf course, and said, we want to buy it. At that point in time, they went to the Wildlife Conservation Board and applied for a grant of $3.4 million to help in the acquisition. They were going to use $1.4 million of public funds at the county. Then they were going to use $2.5 million from Measure A funds, and together with the 3.4 from Wildlife Conservation Board, they would have enough money to buy the course. And who came up with $8.8 million? We have not figured out.
Well, okay, so this, are we talking, at this point, with the names of the gentlemen who work for the county and have nothing, I'm sure, but the very best interests of Marin County residents, were they involving the other supervisors? Has a decision been made as you're getting to this?
We could find nothing on the going through, you know how they record the supervisors' meetings? We could find nothing about the acquisition of this property. They had gotten TPL involved immediately because Brendan Moriarty, I've got emails from Brendan Moriarty from TPL and Dave Sutton from TPL. They were all involved, and Brendan Moriarty ordered the appraisal of the golf course on April 7th of 2017. Now, to give you some perspective on this, it was September 27th that they put out a press release saying the county's going to buy this course. All of these negotiations happened during the summer without letting anybody know. They didn't let anybody in the community know. However, they let all of the environmental groups know, because the environmental groups were writing letter to the Board of Supervisors, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. And there are a lot of environmental groups who are all got behind this thing. Just like all of them got behind the demise of the oyster farm.
Let's, before we get off the oyster farm is a fascinating, interesting story, and that deserves a long show. So the knowledge was out there, you're saying, among the environmental groups, and there was an active letter writing campaign on behalf of this. So this must have been to some level of public knowledge then.
No,
in that
it was not
summer
public.
of.
It was not public knowledge. At least nobody in the community that I know of. I know that the golfers knew because Mr. Lee said, "I'll take $5 million," and then the minute 8.8 million got mentioned to him, it was hush hush. We don't want anybody to know that this is happening. However, I have an email from Jennifer to Brendan. Jennifer is the daughter of Mr. Lee. And I have an email from her saying, we have told Spawn to hold off, as if Spawn was one of the potential buyers. This is in April. I didn't bring those emails with me, but I have them. So Spawn and the county is working on getting this thing. And I have an email that shows that Brendan Moriarty, hush, hush, quick, got the appraisal done by Valbridge appraisers in San Jose is where I think they are headquartered. So then, all summer long, this is all negotiating, coming along. October 6th is the first meeting that the Board of Supervisors have in which they say, well, first of all, September 27th, the press release, we're going to buy it. Then October 6th is the first Board of Supervisors meeting. And all of the environmental groups send out their minions to come to the Board of Supervisors meeting. And the way that Judy Arnold handled the meeting was anybody that represents an organization gets to speak for 3 minutes, and the general public gets to speak for 2. So people with fish heads and dressed up like monkeys, not really monkeys, but bears, and got to speak for 3 minutes. And these were all the environmental groups. I mean, there's a lot in Marin. And there's a lot, for example, the Sierra Club isn't just in Marin, they're national, but they have a contingent of 6 people in Marin that voice their opinions. The Barbara Salzman from the Audubon Society is always there. Of course, the Spawn people were always there. And they're all talking about how wonderful this was. And those of us in the community were going, why? Why? This doesn't make any sense. You're going to spend way too much money for this. The appraisal did not appraise it as a golf course. They appraised it for the potential of development, and everybody knows they would never develop that.
Is that it? So the 8.8 million is a figure that an appraiser gave it based on a development model?
Yes. And I have a copy of the appraisal if you'd like to review it. But it was, I mean, the fact is that nothing we said made a difference. By that point in time, they had made up their minds. The first I learned of it was Dennis Rodoni went to a meeting at the community center, and Linda Giacomini, who is Gary Giacomini's widow, came to that meeting and announced to all of us, guess what, you guys? This is a waste of your time because it's a done deal.
To your meeting?
It was a public meeting.
Okay.
It was a public meeting. Dennis Rodoni had called it to tell the community that this is what he was doing. It was a Friday before October 6th. I can't remember the exact date.
And you were there.
I was there.
You had already got wind of it. And
I was in shock. Oh, come on. We've got to stop this. This is crazy. Now, another person went through every single meeting minutes. The recorded, they did not find a single situation in which they went into closed session, which they're supposed to do, and talk about acquiring the golf course. They're supposed to
The
do
supervisors.
that. Supervisors.
Which seems like what you would expect a normal mandate. They even have a law called the Brown Act that the supervisors are supposed to do everything publicly to make a decision.
Right.
And if they didn't, how did that decision get made then?
Dennis Rodoni wanted it done. He wanted to close the golf course. Why, I don't know. And then one of the things that just drives me crazy about why they want to close it is they want to restore the creeks that are on the golf course for the fish. And I have this picture, 1952, that shows the creek just the way it is now. So they're going to restore it. What are they going to restore it to? This is what it was. Restoration is an incorrect term. Conservation is an incorrect term here. I also have documents that show that Spawn has built both the state and Marin County, and so is MMWD, of $20 million to save these fish. And
tell me that again. Right? The $20 million you're saying they
got
from the
from
state?
Cal Fish and Wildlife. Their tax returns show $18 million in grants for. I have the paperwork. I have to look at the date. They kept saying we got to do this for the fish, or we got to do that for the fish. Throughout the 2000s, we've got to do all this stuff for the fish. And I have a document that Niels Johnson wrote in 2006 that says the County of Marin has spent $5.3 million on trying to save fish. This is, as far as I'm concerned, a huge boondoggle in terms of they cry wolf about how dangerous the demise of the fish is, and there aren't that many fish. After spending $20 million, they don't have any more fish than they've ever had.
Well, I would just say I can see what you're getting at. And I think anybody who has any kind of public, interest and or a sense of looking to have our elected officials be actually responsive to all the people, that anybody should be very concerned. Of course, we as people on the planet are aware that the human footprint has gotten more and more, species are threatened all over. So I certainly don't object to somebody doing whatever efforts that might seem workable on behalf of the fish, including education for people, and if it has to be septic runoffs, and even though they're very costly, maybe this is indeed something that has to be, dealt with in a responsible fashion. People have to move to a higher level. I guess the question is whether this money is, even today in terms of the expansion of the floodplains in the lower reaches of Lagunitas Creek. And maybe it's a question for biologists. Maybe the biologists know. But it's certainly a cost-intensive event with land-moving equipment to rearrange the creeks. And so we're kind of stuck in it. Right now, the Spawn seems to be looked upon as the voice of authority, and the state.
And I have to tell you, in my opinion, they lie every single time. And the reason they lie is that it serves their purposes. If they said the fish were gone, or the fish were so few that it's not any point in doing it, their grants would dry up. But their grants are feeding them. They started off, when they first rode into town in 1999, they had a $30,000 net asset on their Form 990, which is their tax return. They now have $2.6 million as their total assets. It's good business to say the fish are diminishing. They constantly say that the Lagunitas Creek is the most important watershed. Okay, I'll give you that Lagunitas Creek is an important watershed, but the San Geronimo Golf Course is 1% of that watershed. And tell me that 1% of that watershed is going to make a difference in the salvation of that fish, those fish. In the MMWD monitors how many fish come into that. I'm looking for the piece of paper.
Right.
And
yeah, I was looking at some of the graphs that you presented to me. Maybe we can put them up for the viewers as they listen to this. But the numbers are sad compared to what the historic numbers of the salmon were.
The truth is nobody counted them. That's a claim. The historic numbers. Where? Where are the historic numbers? Here's a guy who wrote, Russell Chatham. He's written all kinds of books. He's fished all over the place. And the contention often made in recent years that the largest remaining population of silver salmon is in Lagunitas Creek is a complete fiction. It's a complete fiction. At this point, there is no person or entity that knows the truth. Okay, here's a guy that knows a lot about fishing and salmon that isn't connected with spawn, and he's saying nobody knows. They didn't count them until, let's say this, the MMWD decided to provide guaranteed water for all of Central Marin. They put in the dams, and when they put in the dams, they eliminated 64% of the spawning grounds. Then the Regional Water Quality Control Board said, well, if you're going to build those dams, then you better monitor the fish. Herein starts the counting of the fish. They don't go back.
Yeah, but it seems from, I'm sure you must have talked to people who have tales of growing up in the valley in the 40s and the 50s and the abundance of fish and how almost anybody in the neighborhood at those periods of time would go fill up a net in minutes. So I don't think it's really not in doubt that there's been a diminishment. But the question is, I think, really, at what level do we, is anybody really placing the blame on the golf course for its impact? And there are questions too that you might not be able to answer, but but questions that environmentalists might say, what is the level of chemical input on the greens? And what I've heard, it's been greatly reduced over the years.
Hardly anything.
Yeah, but so that's still a valid question. But again, as you talk about, the breadth of the creek is. I think it might be as much as 4% touching the creek. I think you said 1% of the creek's level, but it's certainly doesn't seem to be a reason why that this golf course, which I am not much of a golfer. I have swung a club just recently on behalf of not behalf, but really of myself, simply to step out onto the greens while they were still here and to hit the ball and to see that.
I should have done that too. I didn't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not a golfer either.
Yeah.
I did this because I like looking at it.
Yeah.
And as a result of doing that, I have learned how incredibly important golf is. It is it's incredible for those kids that can't play contact sports, that can't go out and risk hitting anybody. I know of a kid that had his septum cut as a result of a tonsillectomy, and he became an incredible golfer because he can't go play soccer or football or basketball and risk hitting his face. I've heard another story of an 85-year-old lady who couldn't really walk, but she got into a golf cart and she went over, and they took her she could tee off, and then they put her back in the golf course, and it kept her alive. Yeah. It gave her something to look forward to.
Well, it is green, and it is green space. It is a use of the land. It's not entirely part of the ecosystem, but at least it's not. It's a carbon sink. It exists. The question back to our golf course issues is really back to the legalities of what was being done. Back to this issue, because I feel like I'm, a pretty annoyingly intense environmentalist myself, and I don't want to be annoying anybody, but I feel like we actually on this planet, the level of destruction and of the success of human beings and the diminishment of nature is pretty stunning and kind of frightening, the kind of the world we're doing. What I'm concerned about is the environmentals, the people who, like myself, embrace the sense of wanting to indeed restore in many areas ecosystems and ecology, that if they do not understand the ecosystem of an existing community, they're just creating more mayhem.
But this environmental response has created huge mayhem in our community. He has sued us 4 times. He has threatened that if the county gives someone a building permit to do anything, and he gets wind of it, he's going to sue them personally.
Sue who personally?
The individual that gets a building permit from the County of Marin.
All right, so, let's go. We'll go back into Spawn then. So, this organization whose mission is to fight to bring back, restore salmon and bring back the ecosystems, has a history since late 1990s of lawsuits against the county to enforce certain standards or to make tighter rules.
Tighter rules. They want no one to build within 100 feet of a creek. And it doesn't matter if the creek is a fish-bearing creek or if a creek is a creek in the hills, just because it's forgetting the term right now, the ephemeral stream.
Right.
An ephemeral stream, you have to be 100 feet away from it because the water flows from there down to where the fish are. But I would like you to put this map up that shows how many fish are on, how many reds, there's red dots, and it'll show you how many red dots there are on the golf course property. The golf course property is the last bit of San Geronimo Creek, and it also has Larson Creek, it also had Willis Evans Creek, and then it's all the way over in this map, or in this list of places, Arroyo Creek. Now, Arroyo Creek is much more downstream and has a chance of having lots of fish because it's way downstream. But there were 6 reds this in 1718. We don't have 19's numbers yet. I don't know why, but we don't. There were 6 reds in the San Geronimo tributaries. 6. All of this has been done saying that 6 reds are going to make a difference in the salvation of the salmon. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I'm thinking what they're thinking too is the goal of bringing it up to maybe 50 reds or whatever, if that was possible. It might be worth achieving. But what I want to get back to still is the interface of what took place here in your forming of the San Geronimo Advocates, and you basically took a lawsuit against...
We filed a lawsuit against the county because their plan was to use the clubhouse for something and to do something else. It was a project, and CEQA says you have to have a project. The County of Marin said, our Brian Washington said, you don't have to have CEQA because you're converting it to open space. And Judge Hackinson ruled against the county. By the way, the county is 6 for 6 in losing CEQA lawsuits. Some of them have been spawn lawsuits, but they're 6 for 6. They lose every single one of them.
Well, it is interesting that they were talking about it's pretty impactful. I don't know what the total acreage of golf course and greens are. It's probably pretty considerable, but the plan was to dig down, excavate, and remove the topsoil and the all that vegetation.
At a cost of $7 to $10 million. They got that bid in April of 2017, and I have the paperwork to prove that.
Really?
$7 to $10 million.
I thought I saw something more like $300,000 they were estimating that.
Oh, no. That was the Golden Gate National Conservancy. And I have it. Sharon Farrell was the woman that came up with. And that was to scrape off all the greens and to truck it out of there. Tell me that that's good for the environment. How about the gas?
I have doubts about that. I agree. It does seem like one of the things where, well, let's keep going for further in the timeline here. So you don't worry about the time. We'll keep going our own timeline. We'll just let it roll here. So the lawsuit that you filed was successful. It put a halt to everything pretty much at that point in time.
And it basically told the county, do CEQA. You can do what you want to do, just do CEQA. In the meantime, they got TPL in there because TPL has deep pockets, and they wrote a check for $8.8 million. We also got a stay on the Wildlife Conservation Board's grant of $3.4 million because they learned that they didn't have CEQA. They hadn't done CEQA, and so they canceled their grant. And the county knew they canceled the grant. They claimed, oh, we didn't know. But they
didn't know at the time when they bought the...
When they applied for the...
And did the county ever actually buy the property, or was it TPL who actually did the buying?
TPL was going to buy it. The county couldn't buy it because they didn't have enough money.
But didn't somebody actually... The buying did take place.
The buying took
the
place.
Signature...
Mr. Lee went to the bank with $8.8 million, laughing all the way. He was thrilled because these people paid him way more than he thought he was going to get. And now TPL is stuck with this. And I have to say, TPL met with us. In addition to this, we did an initiative. One of the things we said was, well, the county could go ahead and just do a CEQA study, and they could still close the course if that's what their intent is. So we did an initiative. I hired a lawyer, and we had an initiative that basically says the community plan says that this land is zoned recreation and that it should be used as a golf course with no expansion for any other purpose. I can give you the exact reading. I have the community plan here. And so we filed an initiative that says it's going to stay a golf course. The fact is that now we have a private party that owns it. We can't force them to run a golf course. But if they should sell it to someone else, that person has to get a vote of the people before they can transfer title to somebody else. So their best bet would be to find a golf course owner, but for some reason they've decided to capitulate to the environmental groups and save the fish. The 6 fish that showed up in the tributaries of San Geronimo Creek last year.
Well, I am totally into saving the fish, but I think that what we need to be looking at is how do we restore not only an environment and ecology, but a sense of community together so it becomes a working, some kind of a pride for the entire community of what's being created. Now, some people have talked about the possibilities of, of the compromised golf course, kind of a wilding the golf course a bit more. There were some people who thought that was quite neat. The golf course also has this beautiful big meeting place, the central house place, clubhouse, where music has happened over the years. There's been, it's been a community resource. It is an existing option.
But the TPL has decided to convert that into a firehouse. We have documents that show that the firehouse is going to cost anywhere from $30 to $50 million for a new firehouse. So why did they come up with converting the clubhouse into a fire station?
Has this already been?
That was in their press release. By the way.
So they do have a plan then. They have a plan that people have seen. That seems like that would be one of my. An important next guest to get would be a representative TPL.
Well, that's how they. Yes, I would think it'd be great to get. But they're a conservation organization. I'm asking, what are they conserving? They're supposed to be a recreation organization. They're supposed to provide recreation. Their website says, we want everyone to be able to walk out of their door and get into open space in 10 minutes. Well, everybody in the San Geronimo Valley can walk out the door and get into open space in 10 minutes. Everybody. We're surrounded. That golf course is surrounded by the Thorson open space, by Roy's Redwoods, by Giacomini open space. There's open space everywhere. There's thousands of acres of open space. We don't need to take this precious resource and convert it into open space. Why? When my kids were little, we used to go to Roy's Redwoods. They had a beautiful meadow there. That's open space. They let it go now. It's got weeds this high, full of ticks. Nobody goes there. A few people may walk through all those weeds. But when my kids were little, they used to go down there and enjoy that big meadow. Somebody kept it mowed back then. So they don't maintain the open space they have, and they're going to convert this beautiful golf course and eliminate. After Touchstone took over, we had many, many, many people playing golf. There were 100 a day, people paying to maintain it. Now who's going to pay to maintain it?
Was it a successful business operation up until the county purchased it? Do you happen to know?
Yes, they made $450. I have the financials. They made $450,000 a year, and the county continued to say it was a losing proposition. I have an email from Mr. Lee in which he told Rodoni, I heard that you were promulgating the fact that we didn't make any money, and I'm going to get my attorneys on you if you don't stop using that misinformation.
How did you do your sleuthing with the emails? Is that sort of a...
Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a public figure.
Yeah.
Oh, good
it's a
for
public situation.
Excellent.
I have this many emails.
Wow.
And we went through them page by page.
Well, I think it's very important for anybody listening to this, no matter what is going on their mind, maybe dismissive of the notion of golf courses as if it's the elite sport that it is. It did serve a community. It had, how many signatures did you get on your initiative?
12,000.
12,000, as far as you know, legitimate signatures that were... Well,
we verified 10,000. We only had to do 8,400.
I see.
And we verified 10,553 valid signatures. We didn't have to go any further. We were way beyond what we needed. But we actually had 12,000 signatures. This, I just have to show you this. This is from Spawn's website. And they're talking about how the number of fish have diminished and over the years. I mean,
well, it doesn't...
after spending $20 million, you would think they might have improved the numbers.
Well, I think, I'm not, I think that there are a lot of factors going on here. They would say, we know the oceans are suffering. There's
That's
a
what it
various.
is. But why blame the San Geronimo Valley? The San Geronimo Valley is 9% of the entire watershed, and the golf course is 1%. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I just can't. And TPL used the fact they were going to convert this. They kept saying, we're going to convert these spawning grounds and make them better. The other thing I want to bring up is the fact that Larson Creek, this 1952 map of Larson Creek, if you can put it on, if you can get it there.
I'll try.
Larson Creek meets San Geronimo Creek right here.
It goes up to the back nine.
And it goes up to the back nine.
Yeah.
They have never studied much more than just this part, because there's like a waterfall, and the fish never go up greater than 4% grade. Salmon only go up 4%. And then they complain about the fact that, see, the water comes from...
No, wait a minute. I mean, how tall is a waterfall? I mean,
it's 10 feet.
Oh, 10 feet tall? Oh.
So water comes from over here, Roy's Redwoods, and it comes across San Geronimo Valley Drive. And right now, there's the pond here. Everybody's, oh, we got to get rid of that pond. You're stealing free water, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They never use that water for the golf course because when it's going there, it's raining, and they don't need it. The minute it dries up, then everything, they wanted to daylight Larson Creek. But they daylight this, there's no...
What does that term mean, daylight the creek?
Well, right now it goes underground. I should show you a picture of the creek. There's a pond.
I see.
And then right under here, it goes underground for just a little bit. It goes into a pipe like this.
See.
And they make this big deal out of daylighting it. But there's no fish that ever get there. I mean, it's a red herring.
Well, it could be. I'm for daylighting all the creeks, including San Francisco and Oakland, but that's a different story because I have a different perspective on the world. But I want to say further that your work in terms of using the Freedom of Information Act and whatever to get these documents, I think everybody should understand that no matter what your perspective is as a citizen for what you're doing, this is it's heroic whether someone might disagree with you or not. It's just
I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on this.
Yeah.
And I care a great deal about our public entities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people that are so sad about this. I saw people cry at the fact that their golf course was closing. I just got a phone call yesterday from someone I played a tournament at Peacock Gap, and it's nothing compared to our golf course. Our golf course is gorgeous.
It is. Human beings, we're very interesting creatures. We have become civilized, and the notion of wandering around for hours in some beautiful little area and letting the worries of the world disappear and just whacking a silly ball and chasing it. What can you say? It's something beautiful for many people.
And in our society, in which so many people are lonely, they would go there, hook up with a foursome, and maybe make a friend, and experience something wonderful. Experience nature. I've got a friend that's a bird watcher. She loves to play golf and watch the birds. When they talk about turning this into wildlife, it's already wildlife. And the whole business of, there's a group of people that for 10 years have been trying to get their septic system put into a system, their septic tanks move into a system whereby it could water the golf course. That's all gone now. They spent 10 years working on this thing. And killing the golf course has killed that whole opportunity. And we have proof that the water table goes up in the winter when it rains, and their septic tanks are floating, and their effluent is going into the creeks. Tell me that Proposition 1 money shouldn't be used for things like that. I just don't understand. I just don't understand. To destroy this beautiful course and not worry about what's going into the creeks from our septic tanks is, I live in the hills, so my septic tank doesn't do that. But the poor people that live, sometimes they can't flush their toilets.
It seems like there's a, culturally people are getting pushed into different territories culturally almost, and it's sort of like a culture battle. The golf course represents something old-fashioned, conservative America, and maybe to some degree it is, where wilderness and wildness is lost in our communities. When I was a kid, there were frequently, just like you're talking about meadows. Meadows could be found all over, 50 years ago, or in America, almost every town had vacant lots, had the field, had somewhere where you could go. We don't really have that so much anymore. We're really become terribly urbanized. San Geronimo Valley is like an oasis of a remarkable bubble of that I wish everybody could have a life that was living like that. I think people.
But so why destroy this course for all when we've got all this other open space? By the way, I am incredibly liberal. I am not conservative, right-wing person in any way, shape, or form. I'm very, very, very liberal. I think this is conservation run amok. Just like our oyster farm is conservation run amok. What has that accomplished? What will this accomplish? Nothing. I really think plastics are our big issue, and honeybees are our big issue, not this, not the few fish. I really think we need to do something about global warming and climate change. Look at these poor people with their tornadoes in the Midwest. I mean, we're not experiencing as bad a situation here, but I think we need to do more.
Thank you. And we had the water shortage for 5 years, a little drought, and the last couple of years, our government, Jerry Brown, it wasn't highly dramatic, but everybody got the message to save, to cut back. And they did it without being highly draconian. They cut back, the people of California, you, everybody, cut back to a term of about 20 to 30%. And I'm still blown away that all this effort of the green movement is all about externalizing the issue, and nobody is asking us to even have a slow Sunday, have a day where we don't Zoom, where we don't have to be, because I think if we're really serious about this, I think there's a lot of power in ordinary human beings' hands. It just seems like
I think what happened to ordinary human beings is they cut back on their water, and now MMWD is raising their rates.
That too. You get screwed either way.
Come on.
You get screwed either way.
You do.
Wow. All right. We've covered some ground here, Niz. I appreciate it. We've gone over what we thought we were going to do. And, you've done a yeoman's job of getting in there in the trenches and fighting the fight. And I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for coming on the show. And California's got some evolving, but we got to talk to each other. And to me, there's no environmental movement unless it understands that it's all about community and it's all about the complete, embracing of a democratic strategy.
We're not online anymore, right?
We are.
Oh, we're still online.
Yeah.
All right. There's somebody else in our community, Jean Berensmeyer, who has lived there just a few years longer than I have. I moved there in 1963, and I think she moved there sometime in the 50s. And she stood in the way of our getting PG&E. We're getting natural gas out there. She has stood in the way of every single development ever. She doesn't want sewers because that'll mean development. Everything about this. She teaches little kids. She rents this. She's got this. I don't know whether she pays rent or not. She's got this portable, and she teaches little kids the importance of the fish. And it's an indoctrination of the kids at Lagunitas School into the importance of fish. And she's all for eliminating this because then she can. I guess her building is right here, and she walks the kids in this part of the creek. I think that the people who benefit by getting grants for certain things should be excluded from choosing. If their livelihood depends on their point of view, then their point of view is not as important. My livelihood doesn't depend on supporting this. My livelihood is what my livelihood is. I'm a real estate agent. But I don't get any grants from the government. I don't get any money. This is Todd Steiner got $1,281,950 to do things on the creek when Mr. Lee owned it. These are all the things he got done. And a lot of this was planting plants. He grows native plants in his little nursery out there, and he brings them over and he plants them, and they all die. There's no follow-up to any of the things he does. It's wrong. And so I find it hard to understand why he should be listened to more than other people. And it seems to be, he was the one that was behind this demise. He said in an email, I have coveted that property for 2 decades. I have coveted it for 2 decades, and now it's going to be mine to play on.
Well, maybe he didn't quite say that, but
no, he said he did say I have coveted this property.
Now it'll be
for
mine.
No, but he said I've coveted it for 2 decades.
He's had his vision, and I think many people have that kind of complete natural world vision. And
these are all the people that are.
And I'm going to have to invite Jean Berensmeyer to join me someday. And I do think the fish are very, very important. And but it's all about what role do we play in this world? And
see, here, the segment of San Geronimo Creek that runs to the golf course likely has the highest density of spawning coho in the 100 square mile watershed, as well as a sizable population of threatened steelhead trout. That is a lie. That's Spawn. In 1999, he wrote that. That is an absolute lie.
That what? What's it, the important part that is a lie was
the
what?
The segment of the San Geronimo Creek that runs through the golf course likely has the highest density of spawning coho in the 100 square mile watershed.
I see. Well, he framed it likely, so we'll give him a little, apparently not 100% likely.
But TPL believed him.
Well, I'll have to talk to Todd as well. Thank you, Niz, again.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. And we'll get into some more interesting conversations as we move California through the 21st century. It's going to be so beautiful by the end of the 21st century.
This is the kind of scare tactics that Todd uses. There was a point in time when we wanted to get 500 square foot additions. And he says if everybody in the San Geronimo got a 500 square foot addition, it would be the equivalent of adding 2 Costco's. Come on. Mongering.
Indeed.
It's evil. I really think so.
All right. All right, Niz. Been good. It's been a good conversation. We are off the air now, and yeah.